Ladies and gentlemen, can I encourage everybody to settle themselves? Thank you very much indeed. Welcome to our annual members' meeting. I think we had a total of 230 people signed up for this. It looks as though most have managed to come. Very grateful to all of you. There are a few pieces of housekeeping before I do my welcomes. There is a speech-to-text typist available here. Anyone who needs it, please make sure that they are in view of that screen. So if people need it, please make sure you've moved over there. We are not expecting a fire alarm this afternoon. The fire instructions run for 3 pages. So I'm relying on the fact that there will be staff to direct us to the fire exits and the assembly points if we need them. I think we can probably manage that all right. It's not too far to go. So if we can take that as read, I'd be very grateful. There are toilets, which I'm sure everybody has found. This annual members meeting is being live streamed onto our YouTube channel. And there is a photographer who's taking pictures. If anybody does have a problem about their picture appearing anywhere, do let a member of our staff know, and we'll make sure that your image doesn't appear anywhere. We can easily fix that for you. I hope you've had time to look around the exhibition. We're very grateful to all our partners and colleagues who have spent the time setting out their wares, talking to us, explaining things. We actually do work as part of the NHS family, contrary to popular rumours sometimes. We do all have to collaborate together. The more we can do that, and the more we can collaborate with our partners in other health organisations and in local government, the better for all of us. I'm looking forward to the question. If we have extra time, we'll try and take some from the floor, but we've got quite a wodge already. We'll do our best to answer them. Any questions that have been submitted which we haven't got round to, where people have given us contact details, we will try and answer those separately. The next thing I need to do, frankly, is just to welcome everybody. We have staff here, we have governors here, we have patients here, we have members of the public, we have board members, we have commissioners, we have Health Watch representatives, we have the Mayor of Brighton and Hove, who is sitting at the front, who is very kindly spending some time with us amid all his other commitments. We really have got a wide range of the people for whom SECAmb is important, and we have to make sure that we hear what you have to say to us, we explain what we're trying to do, which will include some things that we can't do. I'm very clear about the fact that we can't fix all the problems tomorrow, but we'll do our best. The only other thing I was going to mention at this stage is that, as you will be aware, we have had a CQC inspection. You will also be aware of the fact that there are a lot of issues in there that we need to deal with. A good number of them we knew already. Inevitably, they've presented us with some additional ones. But we had started work on the improvements that we need to make. We're not going to shirk from making those improvements. They're going to be difficult. They're going to be hard. We have a summit meeting tomorrow, which is going into the detail of that with colleagues in the NHS and with the CQC. We're not able to share detail of that now because it is still under embargo. It's a shame because it would have been a good opportunity to share some of those difficulties with all of you, but we can't. But we will make sure that we share that information, both about some of the things that we need to improve, but perhaps more importantly about how we're going to go about improving things just as soon as we can. We're going to start with a Survivors DVD. Some of you may have seen this DVD already. It was presented at the Survivors event on the 25th of September. So if you've seen it already, I apologise. But I think it is important that people do have the opportunity to celebrate some of the things that we do well. Inevitably, we spend a lot of time worrying about the things that we do less well, but we've got to be able to do both. And getting the balance right is never easy. There are challenges in what we do, but we absolutely mustn't forget the care and support that our staff do provide to people day in, day out. Staff and volunteers. We have a huge number of people doing all they can and working as hard as they can to deliver the services that we need to deliver. The video shows the great job that our frontline staff actually do. You'll hear some of the stories of the people they've helped and the difference that SECAmb has made to them. So I commend it to you. It lasts, I think, about 15 minutes. After that, Geraint is going to give you his review of the year. We have to present the annual report and accounts, and then we will move to the questions and answers. Now, the only other thing that I was going to mention before I hand over to the film is that you will have had, I think, the annual members meeting minutes from 2015. I hope that people are content with them. We just need to adopt them. Would somebody be prepared, please, to propose that we adopt the minutes of last year's meeting? Yes, lady at the front. Fiona Morris is proposing it. Will somebody please second that? Somebody? Yes, Jean, thank you very much indeed. I was worried for a moment. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to the film and I'll get out of the way. Thank you.
I didn't know I was under any kind of stress, I didn't feel any different. In fact, I felt quite fit. We were doing quite a lot of work, planning to do this, planning to do that. It really was totally unexpected.
I was very blissfully happy. Retirement was marvellous. I had no anxieties or worries. I'm very lucky, I'm blessed with very good health. So this thing rather came out of the blue.
Something was just, it was like a sixth sense said, get up, there's something not right. And I found him on the floor here, and I knew he was in trouble. I knew it was serious.
I was being told that that Imogen had collapsed at work and ambulance were attending.
I had a normal week at work. Apparently I went to work absolutely fine. I did a ward round with Lottie, and halfway through the conversation I just dropped dead.
You kept pointing, didn't you? Right there, specifically right there, saying, I've got this pain right there. And I said to Trevor, well, I don't think you're having a heart attack. I said, because you haven't got a pain down your arm or the back of your shoulder or down your back of your neck.
It almost sounded like snoring, but it didn't sound right. It was very loud noise, and I went in and he was laying on the floor and sort of wedged against the bed, and I just couldn't arouse him, so I immediately rang 999.
I'm coming up to the traffic lights and I see them turn red, and for some reason I thought I'll put the handbrake on and I'm just going to close my eyes for 2 minutes, and that's the last thing I remember.
It was coming up towards the end of our day, so we were heading back towards a station, fortunately fairly close by to where the incident happened.
I remember pulling over, loads of traffic, it was raining, and there was like a Land Rover parked up on the curb of this M25 bridge, and you can see this guy trying to give someone else chest compressions in the car.
I just ran around to Hugh, realised he was in trouble, and I thought first thing I've got to do is get the emergency services on the way. But while I was doing it, I just instinctively started doing CPR while he was in the chair, and just shouting at him, trying to get him to recover and to sort of keep talking going.
Got to the house, went upstairs, and he was on the floor. He looked quite pale.
Upon our arrival, Paul's wife was doing really good chest compressions. So the police medic Barry took over compressions, which gave myself and Kate ample time to fit the AED and maintain the airway.
I took my instructions really from the lady on the phone, to be honest with you. I know I've been a nurse for 40 years, but I completely went into, oh my God, this is Dr. Campbell, what do we do? And she calmed us down. If it hadn't been for her, I just think we'd have gone to pieces a bit, really.
I think it was incredibly fortunate that Dr. Leslie's position was just a few moments away from the ambulance station nearby, and that I think was paramount to his success.
I just remember giving them the instructions through NHS Pathways and then counting out, and I believe the wife was counting out as the son was doing it. It was a really comfortable call, and obviously I think the son did an amazing job of actually just knowing that it is his father as well, of actually just doing it, and he obviously did an amazing job.
It didn't seem that long until those guys in those green, uniforms were in that bedroom, and the relief. There's certain things you remember. The sounds that Alex made, the terrible look on Sam's face when he was trying to do the CPR on his dad, but the complete look of relief on his face when these professional guys walked in and just took over.
Having 3 people who knew what they were doing with the kit that they required was really, really great.
Never been so grateful to see somebody as when they came through the door and they basically took over then, really, which was brilliant.
We shocked him, and I believe we got Ross momentarily. We had to shock him again a few more times, I believe.
We were told by the consultant then that that the next 24 hours would be tricky because his heart was so unstable. And so I remember saying to the consultant there, I said, well, I don't want to go home without a husband. And I don't want to go home for my daughter without a father. So, and she said, well, we'll do all we can.
The immediate aftermath of all this, when I was lying in my hospital bed, you lie there thinking, that's it, I've had a warning shot across the bows and I'm going to change everything. And there were moments when give up work, go away, buy a Ferrari, have fun. I don't worry about things so much. There's nothing dramatic, as I keep saying to everybody, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's already happened to me, so that's it. So yes, I take it a lot more calmly now.
I've now got all this ironmongery inside me, as I call it. ICD, pacemakers, stents, and goodness knows what. But that doesn't have any effect. Life goes on just as it did before, really.
I don't tend to worry about things as I used to, because I think the worst thing you can sort of worry about dying, if you like. Well, I did, only for about 5 minutes or so, but I did. So you think, well, I've done that, so I don't worry so much about things. I think, well, I've done the worst. Anything else is a bonus, so make the most of it.
I try not to let things get to me the way they might have done before, because it's a realisation that it's too short, life's too short. I think in many respects I'm the lucky one, because I'm not mentally scarred from it. As I say, it's more my son and my daughter and Caroline that have suffered. And in some respects I feel like guilty. Look what I've done.
You have to move on, you have to get on with your life, and you have to believe that it's not going to happen again. Otherwise you're in constant worry mode, and you won't do anything, you won't go anywhere.
For me, it's kind of, I could just look back on it and think, what a horrendous thing I went through, but an amazing thing as well, because it's opened my eyes to kind of the ambulance service, HEMS, all of these amazing things the doctors do and the nurses.
It's a very strange feeling that's difficult to describe, that, there is a woman that, but for her, I wouldn't be here.
If it wasn't for the people that were there on the day, I don't think he wouldn't be here now. Most definitely not.
It just surprises me that really paramedics aren't given a lot more credit than they are.
I think they're guardian angels, and in our case, they were lifesavers, literally, so they deserve all the credit they get. They really are amazing.
I would have to say a huge thank you to them for the way they handled the situation and helped my family, not just me.
just wanted to say thank you for making sure I've got Alex, and you know, we've been together over 30 years, and you know, I want to kind of have a longer life, don't we? And we owe them everything, because you know, without, we would have lost a member of our family, and I don't want to lose him.
Everyone does their job. There are many jobs out there that I couldn't do at all. So for me, I very much see it as this is what we're trained to do. We're not doing anything out of the ordinary. It is just our job. But I think I do appreciate that for them, it was, you know, literally a life-changing day.
In the last 10 years, I've only had the pleasure of reviving one other person that, you know, went back to work and continue enjoying life. It's going to be a real pleasure to meet him and to meet his family, and just to know that we make a difference.
I think it'll be really, really nice to see and hear like their side of the story. Yeah, I'm just a bit nervous.
Yeah, I think it's both our first times where we're going to meet someone after.
It's a proud achievement. It makes you realise why you're doing the job. It's a proud moment to be able to save someone's life, be able to successfully resuscitate them, and then to be able to meet them later on is a real achievement.
I think it's always lovely, you know, in the ambulance services general, we have very few opportunities to meet the patients that we see and that we try and help, certainly ones that are critically unwell. To have that opportunity to meet with those patients and their loved ones and see the success is a really wonderful thing.
Great stuff, and congratulations to everybody involved in it, and of course to everybody else who does similar things. Just to reinforce the timings for this afternoon, Geraint has 20 minutes, David has 10. I didn't mention we also have two other reports that we're giving you. First of all, there is a report from our lead governor, Brian Rockwell, who again has 10 minutes, and then we are allowing Ian 15 minutes on volunteering within SECAmb, which is something that we need to understand better and use better. So I'll kick off with Geraint, who thought he had rather longer, but is under firm instructions not to take it.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to echo Peter's comments. That presentation is very humbling, isn't it? But it actually shows when our trust gets it right. Now I'm going to give a presentation which might show when the trust may have got it right about the review of the year, so I'm going to deliver some less palatable message, I'm afraid, but that's my role as the Chief Executive. Oh, where are the slides? Am I pressing the wrong button? Sorry, technical hitch. Oh, don't worry, it's not a problem. I might sing to you because I'm Welsh, so I'll clear the room, I'm afraid. So I won't do that for you, okay? Am I on? Yes, thank you. Hopefully I don't have to explain too much about who we are, because lots of you in the room will be members of the organisation or actually a part of the organisation. It's really important that we talk about, we do serve 5.5 million people across our area. And we do 999 calls to the public and 111 and currently some PTS services. But I'll talk about further on the presentation about the changes to the organisation moving forward. Basically, 90% of our staff provide frontline services. That's fantastic for the organisation. So the presentation you've just seen in the video shows the type of response we provide to the population we serve. We do roughly 1 million calls per annum to the organisation for 999 and 111. But it's really important we do those in line with the values of the organisation. And our values are to be proud, show respect, have integrity, be innovative and take responsibility. They are crucial because they show how we value the organisation, how we value the patients and the staff. So it's really important we show those when we provide care to you. Our Foundation Trust basically has a membership, and there's lots of members in the room, so thank you for coming this afternoon. Thank you to our Council of Governors for the role you do in the organisation. It's really important that you show a governance role in the Trust. And Brian's going to talk about the work the Council does over the last year. And it's really important actually that our membership is growing, and it's really good that we can show that last year our membership grew by 3%, which is really important for us. So if you've got friends, if you've got family who want to be members of the trust, please go to the membership stand, please take the membership forms away and encourage people to become members of the organisation. I'm sure Brian will echo that point as well. However, this is the more difficult message I have to give. We've had a very difficult year in SECAmb over the last 12 months. In the annual report, we allude to this and we talk about it. Now I'm going to give you a presentation that highlights the key points that happened in the last 12 months. Basically, each of these points is going to have a slide coming up. So there's changes to the board level. There's the performance in 999 and 111, which was challenging. There's our clinical performance, which was challenging. There's the PTS performance and loss of contracts. There's the finance in the organisation, which actually was a good news story last year. So that's a good news story, actually, these bullet points. And the governance challenges now, specifically on Red 3. So that's what I'm going to give you a presentation on now, moving forward. So in terms of changes to the board, in light of Red 3, which I'll talk about later in this presentation, there was a requirement for the organisation to respond to the response from Deloitte and also the internal review and external review by NHS England and NHSI. Sorry, NHSI is NHS Improvement. Sorry, I'm using jargon. I apologise for that. Pardon? I will. I'll try to speak plain English. I apologise for that. So in terms of changes to the board level, which is the part of the organisation runs the organisation, the board, we've had the chairman resigned in March 2016, and Sir Peter Dixon became our interim chair at that time. Paul Sutton, our chief exec, left the trust in May 2016, and I became the interim acting chief exec from that date. We've also had to change our medical director during the last year, and Rory McRae was in the audience. Where are you, Rory? Sitting in the front, has joined the organisation in July 2015. And James Kennedy, our chief operating officer, left the organisation in May 2016. And a new director of operation, Ian, who's going to do a presentation later this afternoon, joined the organisation. So you can see we've had key changes at the board level in light of the Deloitte's report and also the challenges to the organisation from a governance perspective. Also, we've done changes to the exec portfolio. So one of the recommendations from Deloitte was actually clarity of exec responsibilities and clarity of the clinical executives specifically. So redesigned the exec portfolios in the organisation to ensure everyone understands their role, their remit and their responsibility moving forward. Another challenging part of our performance last year was our 999 performance. Unfortunately, the slide shows that the last financial year we didn't hit our targets. That's a key challenge for the organisation. That means we are failing the population and the patients we serve. Our key role moving forward is to have plans in place to address our poor performance and to ensure that we are getting the staff in place, retaining the staff, training the staff and delivering the service we need to do. And Ian's going to talk later about some of the challenges we've got around that and how we want to work with community first responders to build a more robust organisation moving forward. Another key thing about our organisation is how we commissioned. So last year, our activity was above commissioned activity. So again, we need to work with our commissioners about a realistic funding base for the organisation and how that then links into the resources in the organisation. That's going to be a challenge moving forward and a key challenge for 16-17 for us. Our one-on-one performance was also challenged last year. So in terms of response times to answering the phone, we didn't hit the targets, and this slide shows that. However, the positive on 111 is that we're hitting our clinical performance in 111. So whilst we weren't hitting the answer calls, we were providing a clinically safe service. That's a key thing I need to get across to you, representing the public we serve, but also to the wider organisation. Our PTS performance actually was quite good against the contract that we were performing against, slightly below where we needed to be. That's a positive message. However, the challenge was it economic for the organisation, and also was it perceived to be successful from the CCG's perspective? And what that meant basically was, in terms of Sussex, the Sussex commissioners decided to give the contract to co-performer. Co-performer aren't here today because they're not part of our organisation. There's a question later to the board, which I'm sure I'll be able to answer on that. And also what we've seen is Surrey have also tendered out the PTS contract, and they've also given it to an alternative to SECAmb, which now is going to be South Central Ambulance Service. So our organisation, unfortunately, has lost our PTS contracts over the last 12 months. Our clinical performance also is challenged from the organisation, and those are broken into two areas. One is the clinical outcomes indicators, which the further slide will show you in a moment, and also clinical performance indicators. And as you can see, we are roughly close or just about achieved in some of the clinical indicators, but below the average in some others. So we need to focus on what we're going to do moving forward to ensure the clinical service we provide meets the needs of our population. We have the staff trained to do it, but also systems in place to ensure we are assuring ourselves we're delivering it. And that's the one thing we have to do moving forward as an organisation. And then finally, this slide shows you that with the exception of STEMI and stroke fast positive, we underperformed against our national clinical performance indicators as well. So as you can see, from a performance perspective, both from 111, 999 and clinical, the last year was very challenging for the organisation, which has led to some of the requirements we have around putting things right this year, which is why post the CQC we'll be talking widely about what we're doing as an organisation to rectify the performance in the organisation moving forward. This is the positive statement for the last financial year, i.e. our finances were very positive last year, and we delivered actually a surplus last year. Moving forward though, we need to think about what does this mean for us to put things right in the organisation. So if we've got a challenging environment we've just talked about in terms of our performance from a 999 and 111 clinical performance, we are going to potentially have a deficit in the coming financial year. And again, we need to talk to you very openly, very honestly about what that means for the organisation, but also how we ensure that on a recurrent basis, we put the organisation back into break even. And I'm sure David will make some points about that in his presentation. I'm talking fast, I've got 20 minutes, so I need to ensure I get it all done, I'm sure. In terms of Red 3, this is the key challenge we had last year. I'm sure you as members of the public, members of the organisation, were aware of Red 3. You saw the articles in the press, and you know about what happened to the organisation in terms of what it didn't do well. We've accepted we didn't do it well. We know we have to put it right moving forward, and we mustn't let it happen ever again in the organisation. And my job as the Acting Chief Executive is to work with the organisation to ensure this never happens again in the Trust. So what we are doing is putting that right via a rectification plan that we developed with the CQC, the CCGs, and NHS England and NHSI to ensure that we are delivering the right things moving forward. And what we are doing to do that is basically the last 4 bullet points on this presentation, on this part of the presentation. We're looking at how we become a unitary board. So how do we ensure the board is effective and working collegially together to deliver on an effective strategy for the organisation? We're also looking at how we ensure the executive directors have appropriate roles, responsibilities and accountabilities moving forward. And that's why we've changed the exec portfolios in the organisation. We've also looked at how we deliver on a culture that is basically clinically focused, but also everyone understands their role, their responsibility and their accountability. So we have an ownership culture in the organisation. That's going to be one of the key things we drive over the coming 12 months. And also we need to ensure that we have appropriate clinical governance systems in the organisation that can assure us that we're doing the right thing at the right time. However, what we need to also talk about is, did the Red 3 lead to any harm for patients? There's been an external clinical review of the Trust's performance in terms of Red 3. That has been undertaken by a colleague from West Midlands Ambulance Service, Dr. Andy Carson. The initial findings of that report, which is very positive for the organisation and positive for the patients, is that there's no indication of clinical harm coming from the external review. This report will be produced hopefully within the next 6 weeks. I personally want to apologise to everybody because this report has been delayed on a number of occasions. We will ensure it is produced in a timely fashion, and we will also be very open and very honest with you as our members, with you as our public and you as our staff about the outcome of the clinical review. There were some achievements though last year. It wasn't all bad news, and I think Peter's right, we need to celebrate the achievements. That presentation we had in terms of the DVD makes me very proud to be the Acting Chief Executive of this Trust. It shows our staff routinely provide excellent services to the patients we serve, and we mustn't forget that. And that's important that we hold on to that, and we do celebrate the success, and we don't just focus on the negative, as Peter's rightly said. So I think the key thing to say last year, we did provide a very, very successful new way of managing sepsis patients across our patch. And that's been held up as an exemplar nationally. That's really important to us to think about how we build on that and ensure that future services are delivered along those lines. There's a new way of rolling out a new drug, Penthrox, that's been put into the organisation. That's around clinical care, effective clinical care, and ensure we use medicines appropriately in the Trust. We've also taken forward some really key developments on our Make Ready programme, i.e. the infrastructure in the organisation. If our staff aren't working from effective environments, safe environments, how we ensure we're providing a safe service? I know there's challenges to the organisation to ensure that everyone supports and engages in the Make Ready programme, but we have successfully opened the Gatwick Make Ready. That includes the new heart facility for the West, and also a new facility in Tammany, which is just east of Chichester, which is very successful for us. We have a programme to roll out, and we need to take that forward. And then also we have a very successful pilot around EPCR, electronic patient record, i.e. going from a paper-based organisation where our staff fill in forms at the end of their shift to a system which empowers them with a tablet, i.e. we live in the 21st century, not the 19th century, which is really important. I think if we get this right, it's a fantastic enabler for our staff, because it enables our staff to see data from the patients they provide care to, and also, more importantly, what's happened to them. So our staff are very keen to understand when they take a patient into hospital, did they survive? Did they come out? And if we can give them that information, it's really powerful, won't it? So that's really crucial for us. We've rolled out successfully. And David, our Director of IMT and Finance, is key to delivering that. And we have a plan to ensure that by next September of the next financial year, it's rolled across the organisation. And then finally, I'm very proud of the way in which we responded to the Shoreham air crash disaster. That's the most proud thing about our organisation in the last 12 months. Our organisation responded in line with the fire, the police, and also voluntary services to respond to a major incident in our area. 40 members of our staff took part, a huge example of how the organisation gets it right in major incident planning, and a huge example to us that when we do get it right, we get it right very well. Looking ahead, I think it's really important we think about how we take forward what we've learned from the last 12 months into the next 12 months. So if we've had the challenge around round 3, which we have as an organisation, if we've had the external review from Deloitte, which we have had, and if we've had the external review from NHS England and NHSI, what does that mean for moving forward? As people in the room know, we've had an inspection from the CQC in May this year. That will be going live on Thursday. We will ensure that we are basically engaging and involving you as our staff, our members and our public on the outcome of the CQC recommendations, what that means for the organisation and what we need to put it right. And it's really important we do that for you. So this time next year, the Chief Exec standing on this podium will be able to tell you what we've done to address those concerns. But as Peter's rightly said, it's not going to be a quick fix. This is a long journey of recovery for the organisation. It may take longer than 12 months. So again, we'll be very honest with you about what we can do in 12 months and what we need to do longer. And that's part of the recovery plan we will be publishing and will be taken forward with you in the public domain. Also, we need to ensure that we do move to our HQ in Crawley, and hopefully we'll be doing that next financial year in terms of a timely process. We need to ensure we're doing that in a way in which engages our staff and our staff see it as a positive outcome. I know change is challenging, and I have been in the EOCs talking to the 3 EOCs currently about the change, and there are some staff who see it as a positive and some staff see it as a negative. It's our role as a leadership team to ensure that all staff see it as a positive and see what it means for the patients we serve. So again, when we move to the new HQ, we can see how we can take that forward, and again, that will happen successfully. Hopefully, we can take that forward. We need to open the new Polegate Make Ready Centre in East Sussex, like we have in terms of the Tangmere and the Gatwick. And also, we need to ensure we are addressing the challenging financial situation. If the organisation is going to go into deficit, which it is, we can't have a recurrent deficit moving forward. Therefore, we need as an organisation to have a recurrent plan that enables us to break even within a set time frame. We need to be honest with everyone what that means for us and what we can and can't do. So that might mean over the next 12 months, us explaining to you as our members, our patients and our staff that actually some things might be put on hold, some things might not be moving forward as the way we wanted them to, but we need to be honest with you about why. And that's because not all the money is there to enable us to do everything we want to do. I won't bore you with the financial deficit of the NHS, but the NHS has to take up roughly 22 billion from the NHS system by 2020. That's a huge target for us. We are involved in 4 sustainable transformation plans to help us take that forward with our partners. And again, it's important that we explain to you what that means for us, and we will be doing that in the coming 12 months. And then finally, we need to ensure we are preparing for the transfer of the PTS service from our organisation in Surrey to our partners in South Central Ambulance Service. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope my dialect didn't confuse you too much. I hope I didn't speak too much in management speak. If I did, I apologise to the person who asked me to speak more plainly. And if I did, ask me any questions at the end. Thank you very much.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Hammond, the Director of Finance and Corporate Services. It's my pleasure to be here today to present to you the results for the last financial year and for them to be received by the annual members meeting. I'm going to cover today the key highlights from the accounts, the governance and risk ratings around those, including our external assurance from our auditors, and finally just propose the accounts to be received. So in terms of our operating financial performance, our income was up on previous years, at just over £206 million. And that's a continuing growth which we see year on year. That obviously is a growth in income. Behind that we see, as Ian mentioned at the public board this morning, the continued growth in activity that we see each year. We also saw an improved bottom line position with a very small surplus of £500,000 compared to a break-even position on the year before. In terms of our underlying financial health, which is represented on our balance sheet, we can see that we've grown our fixed asset base. That supports, as Geraint's already highlighted, our investment in infrastructure, such as our vehicles, medical equipment, and our make-ready centres. Much of the cost of the make-ready centres which we're opening this year was incurred not only in this year but in 15-16. So we can see our fixed asset base is growing. Conversely, we can see our cash declining slightly as we invest the money in the assets to deliver the service to our patients. So perhaps more of the interesting stuff than just the P&L and the balance sheet. We can see on the slide here, and apologies if it's a little small, I shall try and walk us through it, that the majority of our income comes from services related to our 999 operations. That's around 80% from our contract, from the contract we have with our clinical commissioning groups, of which there are 22. 8.2% comes from PTS contracts in Sussex and Surrey, as Geraint has talked about already, and the remainder comes from income for Heart, Sequin, 111, and smaller other sources which come in, such as insurance rebates, for example, where we attend an RTA. In terms of where we spend the money, 65% of our costs are staff costs. 10% of our expenditure relates to clinical supplies and equipment. Around 8 to 9% is spent on our fleet. And 5% is on our estates and infrastructure, IT and so forth, across the 4,500 miles that we cover. In terms of assurance to our public, we have an independent audit of our financial position each year. That's performed by Grant Thornton as our independent auditors. They were happy to confirm this year that the accounts provided a true and fair view, and there were no qualifications to their audit, which means they gave us a clean bill of health. That's all I wanted to cover today in presenting the accounts, and thank you very much.
Good afternoon to you. I'm Brian Rockell. I'm a public governor, one of two public governors for East Sussex, elected by the members here today and those unable to make it today to be one of your public governors. I'm here, however, as lead governor to deliver to you the report on behalf of the Council of Governors for the year. And you will see in the audience, and may already have met, many of our members of Council of Governors who, of course, represent the 3 counties. There are no slides. It's been an exceptionally challenging year for the Trust, and you've heard that from the Chair and the Acting Chief Executive. And we as a council are under absolutely no illusions that 2016-17 will bring even more challenges in putting the recovery plan in place against rising demand and the financial challenges. But it will also bring new and much needed opportunities to improve against that backdrop. These opportunities do have to be grasped on behalf of all of our stakeholders, and particularly a much greater number of members of the public who we serve. We want an ambulance service of which everyone can be proud. And I have to say, on behalf of the council, anything less would not be good enough. But I do continue to be proud to be associated with SECAmb. We saw, and those of us at the Survivors event heard, of the excellence of that service provided by SECAmb's frontline staff and volunteers providing excellent care to patients every minute of every day, and this year who worked very hard as demand increased. And it's very easy to only see the newspaper headlines and to hear of the things that have gone wrong and what needs to be put right, and forget the excellence of that work which continues every single day. I've been a community first responder, as has my wife, and founded a team in an extremely challenging area and developed and led that team until very recently. I can testify absolutely firsthand to the dedication and commitment of the Trust clinical and support staff, and I refer here particularly to those at EOC, and how their work really does save lives. And I can add to that when I myself needed, in extremis, as we all do at some time in our lives, the support that only SECAmb can deliver. And SECAmb was absolutely there for me. And if I mention, and I hope they'll forgive me mentioning them by name, Charlie Adler, Alison Stebbings, David Davis, and last but certainly not least, Professor Andy Newton, to whom I owe a great deal for my subsequent recovery. It was Andy that persuaded me I really was ill. I told him I wasn't. And he told my wife I was ill, although she thought I was. So I'm going to pay tribute to each of those, but not just each of those in the circumstances I describe, but the clinicians of SECAmb that are doing that every hour of every day. There is no doubt, however, against the backdrop of that wonderful work, that the Council of Governors has been greatly concerned by the governance and safety failings identified by those reviews about which you've heard, and those inspections. As yet, as a council, we've not received a report on the patient impact of the Trust RED 3 process. And we know from the acting chief executive that's coming soon. We have heard, both from the chair and the acting chief executive, that much work is already underway. And the council will be keen to support and drive with the trust swift improvement in line with the recommendations and those that have to be delivered most speedily. But I have to say the role of governors is not without its challenges. They, together with many others, are volunteers in the trust, and you're going to hear more about volunteers and how volunteers can deliver even more life-saving capacity. The council has a statutory duty. It has a number of statutory duties, and the one I'm going to refer to particularly is to hold the non-executive directors collectively and individually to account for the performance of the board and to represent your interests, what you need, and the needs of the wider public. We do not, there's lots of we do nots, but I'm just going to highlight, we do not have power over, we're part of a governance process, nor responsibility for the day-to-day running of the trust. And we rely absolutely on a good relationship with the board and high-quality information to understand what is happening and to enable us to challenge effectively when things do not work well. We will always support positive improvements, But on your behalf, and you would expect nothing less, I would suggest, we would be resilient in our challenge when improvements are not forthcoming. We do take our despite us being volunteers, we do take our responsibilities to our members and the wider public very seriously indeed. And we have been disturbed by the unrest and the failings that the various inspections by the regulators. Governors had previously understood that the Trust was doing well in many areas, and indeed it was and continues to do so, but I'm not particularly highlighting those in these particular comments. In fact, some of the issues raised during the Red 3 process and by CQC, and we'll know more shortly as you've heard, were issues that have been raised by staff and by governors over the years and had not been addressed or not adequately understood. We will expect now the board to commit to and deliver the processes, behaviours and culture needed to ensure concerns that are raised through any route are taken seriously and addressed. But we've tried not to stand still. We've reviewed our practices as a council, and particularly our interaction with the non-executive directors, and we're very grateful for their cooperation and their work with us through the process. In recent months, the Trust has conducted a thorough review of its own internal governance processes, which, as you'll heard already, include restructuring the board committees and the executive team portfolios and the management structures. And there is, as inevitably is the case when these things occur, there is now more oversight of the work being undertaken. The Council is now producing its own report for board members following our meetings, which outlines ongoing areas of concern so that we can interact with them, we can communicate with you as members, and we can meet your needs. We shall not deflect from what has to be our primary focus in line with our statutory responsibilities. We shall continue to hold the board to account. Just hearing that these things are beginning, these things are happening, will not be sufficient assurance for us. You'll have heard too, and I would just like to reinforce, and you'll read it in your daily newspapers and on the news, that the NHS as a whole is working in an extremely difficult environment. And we do not underestimate the difficulties which the board and the executive and SECAmb as a whole will face. A lot of very hard work goes on every day to try and support our communities across the 3 counties. We ask for your support too as we face these challenges. In part, that is only calling for an ambulance when you need one, or calling 111 when you need that support. And that's not to discourage it when you need it, but to discourage inappropriate engagement. We do encourage our members, our aspirant members, and I'll come to that in a moment, and the public to get in touch with us so that we can understand the issues that do concern you, so that we have a clearer picture of community needs. We can't deal and manage individual issues that have arisen, but we will certainly signpost any of those issues in absolutely in the right direction. We can be found fairly easily. It's not hard on the internet now to track down organisations and people. We do have a membership office, and our email addresses are in the membership newsletter, Your Call. And I would encourage you, if you're not already a member, to become one. Our stand at the back has a leaflet telling you all about becoming a member, how we communicate with you, how you can offer yourself up as a governor, and the opportunity to stand here and tell all of you who have very kindly taken an interest in attending, so I'm very grateful for that, as is the council. We can tell you what we've done and how we've worked on your behalf. I'd like to close by thanking my colleagues on the council and the members of the trust itself, with whom we do work very hard indeed. And our council members work very hard, not just at standing meetings such as this, but engaging in our communities. And in our Council of Governors this morning, I referred to the very large number of public events at which we attended, where we always try to encourage people to become members, to learn more about SECAmb, to learn CPR from those in attendance too. We do our utmost to engage with you at those large events. And finally, we greatly appreciate too the hard work of our membership and governor engagement team, led by Isabel Allen as Assistant Company Secretary. It is a small but very hard-working team that provides to us as governors highly professional support and guidance, and of course encourages and supports new members who've wanted to become more involved and to learn more about SECAmb. And they're available to you as they are to us as members of the Council of Governors. On behalf of the Council, I'd like to thank you very much for coming today. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. My name's Ian Ferguson. I'm the Interim Ops Director for SECAmb. And what I've been asked to do this afternoon is talk about volunteering at SECAmb. I'm particularly going to concentrate this afternoon about community first responders. What I'd like to do is, I'll say a few words of introduction in a moment. We'll then feed back to you the results of a patient satisfaction survey into community first responders. We'll then give you some feedback that we've had from CFRs and their leaders about how we could improve the service that we give to them. And we'll give you our ideas for the latest developments about how we could improve the contribution of CFRs based on that feedback. And finally, we'll describe the vision that we have for CFRs in the years ahead. Now, I was asked to give a presentation on volunteering in SECAmb. So I thought it only appropriate that I didn't actually give the presentation, but I got several volunteers to come and join me and actually do the work. So I'd now like to invite the volunteers to come up. I'm going to give a brief introduction, but I'm basically going to pass over to the volunteers to give this presentation. So I can introduce, first of all, Sue Skelton, who's the Associate Director of Operations and has the lead operationally for CFRs in SECAmb. Mark Lamble, who's responsible for EOCs and for mobilising the EOCs effectively, and James Crawley, who is a public governor and a CFR team leader in his own right. So I'd like to say a few words of introduction, but basically I'm going to pass over to the volunteers to give the presentation. I'm going to sit down and have a rest. We've done a bit of research into CFRs and what people think of them. CFRs are members of the public who are trained to respond to emergency calls. So they give up their own time, they help members of their local community, not only in providing life-saving treatment, but also in providing reassurance and care and kindness. So we thought it would be a good idea to get some feedback from patients as to what they thought of our CFRs. Most businesses would give their right arm to have feedback like this. 90%, more than 90% of our patients are very satisfied with the contribution that CFRs get, and a further 10% are satisfied. So that's 100% of all the patients that we attended think the CFRs are fantastic. And that is an unbelievable tribute to the quality of the CFR community in SECAmb. Not only that, but 100% of patients think that CFRs are kind and caring. And again, you think of that, 100%, every single patient that we went to, the CFRs went to, thought that the CFR contribution was kind and caring, and they were responsible for improving patient care. I mean, that is an unbelievable achievement. And in fact, we have 21 CFRs in the audience today, and it'd be great if they could stand up and we could pay tribute to them for the work they've done. There's just one more slide for me. I like statistics. Those of you who know me well as an operations director have got to like statistics. CFRs went to nearly 20,000 patients in SECAmb last year. Now you just think of that, 20,000 patients benefited from the contribution of our CFRs. That's absolutely fantastic. And as I say, every one of them thought that the CFRs did a great job. There are 620 CFRs in SECAmb, and they've given up 210,000 hours. Now again, just think of that, 210,000 hours of patient care given for nothing so they could help their communities. It's absolutely fantastic. Now I'd like to hand over to my volunteers to finish the presentation. I'll sit down.
Okay, as Ian said, what we've done is we've taken feedback from both the public, from the CFR team leaders and individual CFRs, from governors and from staff. Because as far as we're concerned, it's really important that we do listen to them. And what we've done as a result of that is we've set up a group that's based on staff from SECAmb, also with volunteers, because they told us they wanted to attend more patients, which is a good thing. They wanted to wait less time between jobs. They wanted a smoother recruitment process, and they wanted a better relationship with us. What we then went on to do is we looked at then how we could actually deliver that. And the group, what they did was they categorised these into 5 different things. One was around improving CFR activation. The other one was around information and communication. The next one was around increasing local support, recruitment and training, and also engagement. What we're going to go through is those 5, and Mark is going to start with the improving CFR activation.
Good afternoon. So from an EOC perspective, one of the first things we're doing is rolling out airwave sets to community responders. By the end of October, each of our counties will be provided with 50 airwave sets to community responder schemes. I think we're fully aware that our dispatch mechanisms still aren't quite right, but we hope that this tangible investment demonstrates we recognise change is needed. 24/7 manned desk. Again, we recognise that the health, safety and welfare of CFRs is of utmost importance, and we will ensure that we have a 24/7 desk to support community first responders going forward. With regards to enhanced working relationships, we're creating opportunities for the community first responders to liaise with the staff on the dispatch and the support desks within our EOCs. We'll be able to use social media such as Facebook and Twitter to let CFRs know when their support is needed. We'll continue to invite CFRs to our training sessions in the emergency operations centres and to build relationships and promote their role. Improvements in dispatch. There's an ongoing work stream looking at the way in which dispatch works as an entire function. not just with regards to CFRs, but for the whole organisation. And I think it's fair to say that the future state for our dispatch is going to change quite dramatically. With the implementation of Airwave, dispatchers will have the capacity to take the accountability for the mobilisation of CFRs, which will allow the CFR support desk to be more available to focus on the staff welfare. We're also looking at technology advances such as response plans into the technology, which will ensure CFRs, as well as all our frontline resources, are tasked with more effective and greater consistency. Our aim is to reduce the variation in the operating processes between our EOCs so we can standardise our working processes. Thank you.
Okay, information and communication. What we need to look at is more accurate reporting. It's really important that we understand, I mean, Ian went through some of the data, but it's important that we do understand that and it's accurate and we can provide it to everyone. Measuring CFR contribution by operating unit. We do see the CFRs as part of our team. So we've got the call takers within the EOC through to the dispatch, and without the CFRs, we couldn't actually get to some of the calls that we get to. So it's really important that we improve that contribution and we work with them within the local operating units. Identifying when and where we need CFRs. Again, that's really important because we need to have people in the right place at the right time. You saw at the beginning, and several people have mentioned, the way we can actually improve the care that we provide is actually being there when you need us. So it's important that we know where we need you and that we get us there as quickly as possible. Increase local support. What we want to do is we want to look centrally. Mark's explained how we need to improve from a dispatching point of view. We also need to know we need to set up the governance from a central point of view. But what we need to do better is we need to do better local engagement. Will Bellamy and the team in Thanet and some other work that's been done in Kent around Paddock Wood is around actually locally engaging with the actual CFRs and working out how we can do things better. The deal pilot, we've actually got, as Mark mentioned, Airwaves radios. That's improved the actual dispatching of them. It's improved us knowing where they are. We've also got vehicles for them and we're taking that responsibility locally. And we're also fostering better local relationships. Recruitment and training, it was one of the things mentioned and we know we haven't quite got that right. So we're going to be looking at how can we streamline that process and how can we improve that process. It's come from feedback from some of the governors who are CFRs and some of the CFRs themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that online because we do need to improve it, we do need to speed it up because we need people on board and we don't want people disengaged before they've even started. We're going to also have... That's okay. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, we want to do volunteer-led training. Some of you saw the volunteer stand. What we've recognised is volunteers can actually do some of the training and they can actually provide that training for their local CFR teams. We need to work with them to actually be able to do that, but what we see is we see that as really important. So from our point of view locally, we're going to support that. We're going to work with them to actually deliver that through the volunteers and through the people that are actually then going to be delivering it to our patients. I'm going to hand over now to James to go through the next couple of slides. Thank you.
Mountain to climb. So we've already heard from our patient satisfaction survey the positive impact that our CFRs have on patients and their loved ones during visits. And we're very proud of our CFRs and the work they do. And we're committed to raising their profile both internally and externally. Each year, we recognise our CFRs during Volunteers Week, which is a national programme, and we know from the feedback received that we're ahead of our fellow ambulance trusts in that. And volunteers, I think, do feel a bit appreciated by that effort and by the tokens that we send them. And we're very involved in national initiatives like Restart a Heart and Shocktober. But in addition to that, our CFRs do a huge amount with their local communities, whether it's establishing a PAD site, whether it's training a local Rotary group in how to do CPR, whether it's working with the district council to provide basic first aid courses. In my team alone, I think we trained 450 people roughly last year, and that's mirrored throughout the Trust. If you want to know any more about those sessions, or how you can organise those for your local group, please visit the CFR stand at the back of the hall, and I'm sure my colleagues will put you in touch with the right people. Within the Trust, community first responders have always featured in our Trust Awards, Survivors events, and they're always regularly featured in internal Trust publications, and that will go on. So our vision. Well, this is the simple bit. In 2016, we've got 624 CFRs. By 2018, we want 1,000. In 2016, we attended 19,934 patients. By 2018, we want 50,000. We're making it simpler to become a CFR through the online recruitment initiatives already spoken about and increased local training. We're improving our volunteering opportunity by increasing dispatches to the right instance in a shorter space of time and with the right equipment. We'll be communicating more effectively with our volunteers, both locally, centrally and trust-wide. We know these changes will make it more attractive for volunteers to support the Trust, and therefore will reach our vision. So, I'll finish with why do people become CFRs? I can't answer that question for everyone because it's always a personal decision. Some do it because they want to help their community. Some do it because they want to learn new skills. Some do it because they want to be part of a team, a collective effort. But I can talk about why I want to become a CFR. And it's simply this. In life, it's very rare that you can turn up in someone's house, a stranger's house, on what is possibly the worst day of their life, and make that day just a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian and his team of volunteers. Some really good stuff there, so thank you all very much indeed. Can I get our panel of experts, please, to come and take their places? Thank you very much indeed. I'll just get everybody to introduce themselves. You'll have heard who some of them are, but not everybody. So we'll just go through a brief exposition of who everybody is, starting with Geraint, who is still the acting chief executive.
Thank you, Peter.
Right.
Thank you.
Brian, I don't need to remind you, but he is the lead governor. Sue, what's your actual title?
Associate Director of Operations.
Thank you very much. And then Rory.
Medical Director, sorry, I got that right.
And Giles.
I'm the Operating Unit Manager for Eastbourne and Hastings area.
Right, so everybody has a very different role. I'll try to allocate the questions as I can, but if members of the expert panel want to leap in, even if I have allocated them, please feel free. And as I said earlier, if we don't manage to get through all the questions, we will try to answer those we've got people's names and addresses for separately. If I do run through all of them, there'll be an opportunity for some more from the floor. We've tried to group these so they have, I think, a little bit of consistency or a little bit of sticking together, but that may not be the case. First question is, with the increasing demand on ambulance services, will SECAmb be able to cope, in inverted commas, in the future? Interesting question. Why don't we start with Giles, who's actually the front end on that? What do you think, Giles?
Undoubtedly, there are challenges in that respect. We've heard a lot today about our financial restraints and the demand. But what never ceases to amaze me is the ability of our frontline clinicians, our volunteers, our EOC staff to pull out all the stops and continue to provide an amazingly professional service to every member of the public that they go to. So, yes, it's going to be difficult, but I have faith in these people. They are just awe-inspiring every day for me. So I think we will.
Any additions from anybody else on the panel?
Okay. Can I put a word of caution in? I totally agree with Giles' comment about professional commitment of our staff, but I think it's really important that we manage expectations and to have a realistic view about what are we funded to do and what does that mean for the service we can actually deliver in the field, and then be very honest with our staff, our patients, our members and the wider public what that means for us. So whilst I totally agree with Giles' comment about our commitment of our staff, I think it's beholden upon us as the leadership team of the organisation to have that honest conversation. And there are some commissioners in the room today, so we've got to be honest with our commissioners about actually what can they fund us to do and what does that mean for us. I'm not to put anyone on the spot, but I think that's the conversation we need to have, and we need to take that forward with them, and we will.
And I think part of that conversation will actually about what are the things that we can't guarantee to do. And we probably need to be a little bit clearer about that. Second question is, how will SECAmb communicate with all its stakeholders about the steps it's taking to improve? Perhaps I can ask Geraint to kick off on that one.
Thank you, Peter. I think that's part of how we take forward the presentation I gave on the challenging year we've had. So this week we will have the outcome of the CQC report, that's the Care Quality Commission reporting to the organisation. That's the part of the NHS that assesses whether our services are safe or not. So we need to ensure that we are engaging with the wider public from the end of this week about what the CQC report means, what are the challenges coming out of that for the organisation, and what are we doing to put it right. And also the timeframes that are involved in putting it right. So I'll be working very much with the executive team and the members of the organisation, and Janino, as our head of comms, is sitting in the corner over there, about how we actively engage with and use existing media outlets we've got, but also the way in which the organisation can use the tools it's got. So we've got a website, we've got a way we can engage with the public via our own system, and also how we use forums like this and the board meetings to be very open and transparent moving forward. I'm sure Sir Peter, as our chairman, want to ensure that our board meetings moving forward are very much inclusive and engaging about what we're doing to put it right. The point that Brian's made to us as a lead governor, how we assure our lead governors we are doing the right thing the right way. And that's what we need to do moving forward from my perspective.
I wonder if Brian wants to add anything as lead governor.
I can add, and it really repeats what I said earlier in my report. All of those events at which we can be seen, and I do include in that those events which are reverse events where CFRs attend, there is always an opportunity to engage with members of the public, with relatives. They will ask questions, they will want to know things. That can be used very positively, even in difficult circumstances, and there are opportunities there to understand what is happening.
Thank you. Next question is rather different. How can we encourage the younger generation to participate as public governors? Very good question, I think. Brian, do you want to kick off on that one?
The Council of Governors attends, as I've already said, a wide range of public events, and that does include schools and other places of learning where there are young people. You cannot become a voting member of SECAmb until the age of 16, but we're keen to encourage everybody. So engage with us or advise those that might ask of you, engage with us at any of those events where we are seen, and we'll keep in touch with you. And it's in our interests, and we hope in the interests of the person that approaches us, tell you more about us and keep engaged with you until you are of the age when you can participate more fully.
And presumably we should be also looking to the younger generation to act as CFRs.
Yes.
Is that something we could do, Sue, do you think, more effectively?
Yes, I think we could. And I think
Excellent.
that's sort of the
Rory, you wanted to comment as well.
Well, I think it's a very important thing in the American experience of improving outcomes from cardiac arrest. Teaching school children how to do CFR has been a very critical piece, and so I think that getting and not least because they have to do it to their parents. So those of you who've got children here, you should consider this. And but it really builds a huge engagement, and the kids really like doing it, and they learn a lot. And so I think part, and it relates to the first question, if we're going to really succeed with cardiac arrest and serious emergency, it's beyond the ambulance service. It's a multi-sectoral approach, including education and the kids.
Thank you. Funny enough, the next question is about CFRs. CFRs are vital to SECAmb. We often hear SECAmb say this. Where is the investment to make them effective? I think that's you to start with, Sue. Some of your presentation may have covered it, but give us a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's quite right, and I think what we recognised is that we need to do things differently. As we started to say in our presentation, we've set up a working group. That working group consists of governors, it consists of CFRs, it consists of members of our team. And what we've done is we've looked at, as we've said, under the 5 work streams, what do we need to do differently? And part of that is what we're doing is around airwave, because that's about listening to you, and that's about actually then changing things so that we can improve that. Because what you want to see from us is not to just say it, we need to actually deliver that as well. So we started with airwaves, and we're going to continue on that journey. We're going to continue in looking at how we dispatch, how we train, how we recruit, and how we actually then increase the contribution. Because if we've said, and we mean it, we will not be able to, in the first question, cope with the demand unless we have people in all of our communities attending our patients. They are as important as our frontline staff, and we want to see that as one big team, and we do need to improve that, and we will.
Giles, I wonder if there's anything from your viewpoint as an operating unit manager on CFRs and how we can invest further in them.
I think one of the biggest investments we can make in CFRs is the ability to work together and invest some time. You know, it's invaluable. There's some of my local area CFR team here today, and I am thoroughly looking forward to the opportunity of when Polegate is open, inviting them in, making the facilities available for them, getting some of the staff to work alongside them, train with them, feel part of the team. Because I think, you know, we can invest in physical things. Airwaves will make a huge difference. A dedicated desk in EOC will make a huge difference, but actually feeling part of a functioning team will make the biggest difference.
And I hope that our public expression today of the importance we place on this will actually help to reassure people. We have another question around CFRs and their use. We're currently seeing an increasing number of patients with non-life-threatening but extremely painful injuries, such as fractures, dislocations, waiting long periods for the attendance of a crew. What consideration is being given to extend the training and scope of practice for CFRs to provide pain relief, such as Entonox or Penthrox? That sounds like a Rory, is it?
It is a Rory. It's not a complete Rory. It's an Andy as well. Andy, do you want to take that call?
Can we find Andy a quick microphone, or can you come and...
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got... It's about... Andy, did you hear the question?
Yes, just wait for the microphone.
Yeah.
It has come up before. So.
Yeah, because it's quite a technical question on the CFR side of it.
Okay, Andy, all yours. No.
You need to hold the red button, Katie, till it comes on.
You probably need to hold it more like that, don't you?
There's a yellow light on. Nothing at all, sorry. Andy, can you go to the left turn, please?
Yes. Come and use it. Come and use this one.
Okay, I think it's a really important question, and it's a question that's come up before.
It's still not working.
Okay, we're in business this time. Right, good. I hope it was worth waiting for. Right, okay, so this is a really important question because it goes to the heart of patient experience and clinical effectiveness. And we know from pretty much all the data that's been generated around CFRs, paramedics, ambulance crews, the one thing above all that patients really benefit from and really value is pain relief. We heard it in the earlier piece to camera earlier when we had the gentleman talking about the pain that he felt after his accident. So what options are available to us? Unfortunately, the law prohibits doing what we'd want to do. What we'd want to do is do what the Australians do and provide nasal fentanyl. That would be the gold standard, but unfortunately we're not permitted to do that because of the way legislation works in this country. So there's probably 2 other options, and Rory will want to come in probably on the technical, medical and legal side here as well. One is Entonox, which is a gas which many of you will be familiar with. It's carried in all our ambulances. It's a very safe gas. We would like to, and indeed we have tried for a number of years to get that out to CFRs. The other option is Penthrox, which also came up in the earlier conversation. So I think if there's one thing we could do to help our patients by helping our CFRs, it would be provide pain relief. So I really appreciate the question. It's a really great question. It's probably the most important question you'll hear this afternoon. And perhaps we could provide Entonox for that purpose?
It's legally fraught is the issue. And indeed, we've been going through discussions with CQC on a number of different issues to do with medicines. And part of the reason why I was very keen to get Andy's experience, he's very, very experienced worldwide with what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I think that's been very helpful.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Next question. Who is responsible for mental health en route to hospital? And there is then a supplementary which says, should it be compulsory for a mental health nurse to go when there is a mental health call?
Well, we are responsible for any patient who's in our care at any time that they are in our care. So from start to finish, that's us in terms of conveyance. There are different schemes across the country where mental health nurses are involved, but there's whether it should be compulsory or not is an issue of debate. There is no doubt that ambulance services who avail of mental health nurses, particularly in their in the EOC and also in 111, those nurses make a huge difference to the experience of the patients, even if they're not right beside them. But there's our crews are very experienced in mental health patients. This is a very big part of their role. It's not something that happens every so often. It's something that happens quite frequently. And so there's quite a good amount of training goes around. I think one other little issue is that there are, whilst there are not enough doctors and not enough nurses, there's also not enough paramedics. We really have to think of different ways of achieving getting a better outcome for patients. But there simply aren't enough nurses. That is a definite issue.
I mean, this could well be the gold standard, but it's unlikely that we would be able to achieve it.
Yes.
Yes, Giles.
Can I just
come on in?
Just add another point on that. Although not directly involved in the provision of care, I'd just like to mention something about street triage. Oh, yes. You may well have heard about it. I noticed Marion there, and I sit with Marion on the project board for it. So this is where a mental health nurse will ride along with a police officer. That's started in the Eastbourne area and has spread across pretty much a whole patch now. A lot of patients who are in an acute mental health crisis present as potentially a police incident because of their behaviour. But by having a mental health nurse available to the police, they are able to quickly ascertain, actually, this is a person who needs care, not needs locking up. And what we do is we will feed in and give advice either remotely by Hear and Treat or by our paramedic practitioners to make sure that the physical health needs are met in those cases. So I think that's worth noting, and it's been very successful.
Thank you. Yes, last word.
Just final rider. We're very, very fortunate that Emma Wadey has joined us as the chief nurse. And Emma is sitting at the back of this room, very embarrassed, but as she says, she has a huge experience in mental health nursing. I cannot imagine for a moment that what we're doing with mental health at the moment will not remain as it is, and I think we'll see some changes in the positive direction. So there's the challenge for Emma.
No pressure. The next question is an interesting one. Well, they're all interesting. This is a different one. Should Co-Performer have been at today's meeting, as they are part of the wider system? What is happening with patient transport in Brighton and Sussex? Would the board be prepared to take PTS back? It sounds as though Geraint should start on that one.
Thank you, Peter. I think we've got to be mindful of what today is about. So today is South East Coast Ambulance Services' opportunity to speak to the public and the patients we serve and represent. So there would be a danger if we had co-performer here that could dominate today's conversation. And I think it's really important from the presentation I gave you that I give an opportunity on the board and the organisation about the challenges we have as a trust. I think what we need to do is to show you that we are working collaboratively with the CCGs in Sussex who commission the service, the hospitals in our patch who receive the service, and also our 999 service who does get referrals from the system when it's not working properly, to actually reflect back to Co-Performer and also the CCGs when the system isn't working. So I think the more important thing is to reflect back how we are working with the CCGs to identify when the service is not working very well from a patient perspective and what it means for us, which we are doing. That we are, and we have engaged in the review of the go-live of the Co-Performer service, and that was made public a few weeks ago. And I'm very happy to say that that indicated that there was no implication that our organisation didn't brief appropriately, and actually we did work effectively to mobilise the service and transfer the service effectively. I actually think the forum to hold co-performer to account is the CCG process, the Clinical Commissioning Group process. So if any of you are going to go to a board meeting or a group meeting or a session around the CCGs, I would suggest you go to High Weald and Lewis Haven's CCG and ask them questions around co-performer. I know that I can see a colleague from Sussex in the audience, but I'm not going to name that individual, but you've heard the question. I think it'd be helpful if you take that back to think about the people in our organisation are very concerned about this. And then finally, I'd like to say, I am really saddened at the way our ex-staff have been treated. And I would like to be formally on record today that we recognise that the previous staff that worked for our organisation, that were 2 Peter Cross, have not been managed very effectively by this process and not treated very well. And they are part of the extended SECAmb family still. We still engage them and we still talk to them, and we still are aware of that. And so I'd like to say formally we are not very happy, as you can imagine, ex-colleagues, about the way they are being treated.
The final part of that question, I think perhaps I should answer. As you'll be aware, we have lost the contract for Surrey on PTS. The main reason we lost that contract was that we put in what we thought was a reasonable economic offer to the CCGs, which they deemed to be too expensive. You'll have heard today earlier on about some of our financial issues. We cannot afford to run PTS contracts at a loss any more than any other contract. So if we were asked to take that contract back, we would only do so if it were made financially viable. And I think the chance of that, frankly, is remote. So I don't think that there is a serious prospect of that happening. Please comment on handover issues. Why don't we start with Giles and then get Sue to have a go?
Yeah, handover at the hospital is an increasing problem for us as operational managers and for staff. Myself and some of my manager colleagues are working really hard in partnership with the hospitals to try and find a solution. I think, as Geraint said, sometimes the difficulty is getting the understanding that the risk to the patient in the community is as great, if not greater, than the risk to the patient already in the hospital. And that is, for want of a better phrase, when I talk to a consultant, that is my ward. My ward is not safe because there aren't any ambulances to send out. So we're working really, really hard with them in collaboration, and we've been reviewing our policy on immediate handover. It's going to be the emergency handover policy to try and anyone that was there earlier this morning would have heard the question around, are we creating a system where we're expecting a 45-minute handover time? No, absolutely we're not. We are aiming for 15 minutes. The policy will allow us to escalate at the earliest opportunity so that we can free up ambulances from hospital corridors, because that's not what they're there for. We shouldn't be nursing patients in hospitals. That's not our speciality. That's not what we're commissioned to do. So we are working really hard, but it is an ongoing problem. And it takes me back to the question earlier around CFRs and pain relief for patients when they're waiting for backup. If we can start looking at some of the issues that cause delays in the system, and it's not just hospitals, but all of the issues that cause delays are the issues that means we can't support our community responders in a timely fashion. So it's a real focus of attention. We're doing everything that we can to get it right, and there is some increasing emphasis on it coming up very soon. So
thanks. Sue, did you want to comment on that one?
No, I think Giles has covered that, and I think we covered it earlier in the board.
I wonder if Rory would just like to give us a couple of minutes on the clinical risk issues, because I think it's important that everybody understands this is not just, ambulances hanging around in car parks not being very efficient. Yeah. There are clinical risks involved, which Giles has alluded to, but can you just expand on that a little bit?
Well, thank you, Chair. So for those of you who don't know, I also work as a general practitioner. I still am in practice, and I see the everyday world and all that goes on. And I have quite a lot of experience working in emergency departments as well. and I've been very involved with the urgent care sort of scenario. So I've got a good series of angles. As I've come into the ambulance service, I've been here for a year now, what's very clear to me is we have a lot of people we don't get to in time. And if I look very simply in the hospital, there's always someone in the hospital who will go to someone in a cardiac arrest. Generally, they make that. Generally, they can cope with that. So the bit that we're finding difficult is that I think that in CCG land and previously in primary care trusts, there's been very, very little understanding of the whole issue of, let's say, cardiac arrest. Just take that as an issue. It never, ever gets discussed. No one ever talks about the public health impact. No one ever talks about what happens if people die and losing people. No one ever talks about if we got there quicker, are the figures for turning these situations from absolute disaster to what we saw earlier on are actually quite good. It's worthwhile investing. All that's not understood. So we've got a culture of no one really understanding what goes on in the jungle of the community. That's the problem. Whereas everyone can see what goes on in the nice little terrace gardens of the hospital. They can see it. But actually, we're talking about something which they can't see. Now, for me as a general practitioner, I see it very, very clearly. And I'm very happy to articulate it to any medical director or to anyone that they really need to understand their patients may be in a situation where they feel they need more resources, but they are essentially in a place of safety. Our patients we've not yet reached. They are not necessarily in a place of safety. That changes a bit if they get a CFR. That's why we have a big push, and that has to happen. But I think it's about how do we articulate that. And I think that I've challenged our board recently, as anyone who's been involved with clinical commission groups or PCTs in the past had any discussion about these issues, and they'll say none. So I think that we're up against a cultural blindness, which I hope the clarity that I'm bringing on today will be of some help.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Next question. What measures have SECAmb taken to recruit and retain paramedics and other skilled staff? There is a second part of the question. It was suggested, two separate questions really, but we'll take them together. It was suggested at the board meeting that resources would be used to cover overtime and more private provision. Is that true? Geraint, do you want to kick off on that one? The second part's probably easier to start with first of all, isn't it?
I was going to start with Sue. I haven't started myself.
All right.
Yeah.
Sue, do you want to have a go at it?
Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Delegation is great. Yeah.
I think around the recruitment, I think we're doing a lot of work around that. And I mean, Rory alluded to the fact of paramedics and obviously the need to have more paramedics. And I think what we need to understand is that we've got lots of areas that we need to look in. We understand the amount we need. It's not just about paramedics. There are ECSWs, there are associate practitioners, there are paramedic practitioners. So we're looking at all groups of those. We have certain pockets of our organisation where we do have more vacancies than others, and we're looking to address that, and we're looking at targeting the recruitment there. Around the private providers and also around overtime, we will always need overtime and we will always need private providers, as we will always need CFRs, because there are times when we cannot cover, and they will be at Christmas and at extreme times when we can't cover. So we always have to have a relationship. And something that we're doing within Ops is looking at those private providers, like we are with CFRs as part of our team, and looking at they come in with our governance and they respond in the same way and use the same tools and equipment that we use, so that we can give that same service, so it will be seamless. So we don't see it as a tiered response, we see it as one response. And as we speak now, we've sent a team out to actually look at other areas and looking at Australia to actually recruit paramedics. So we are trying everything we possibly can to actually look at recruitment and to actually keep those staff. The retainment we need to look at better. How we retain staff is something that we do need to move forward. We're not doing that as well as we could, and it's about understanding why people are leaving us. Ian said earlier in the board around the EMAs as well, and it's the same with paramedics. We need to look at why they're leaving, and we need to look at doing things better to actually retaining it. It's not all about money, it is around the experience, it is around the hospital handovers, it's about everything. It's about everything that's involved in the job, and we need to improve that experience for them and improve how we actually treat them. So I think that's still work in progress.
And we have to make SECAmb a place where people not only want to come to work, we also need to make it a place where people want to continue to come to work. We haven't cracked that yet, but we need to. It absolutely has to be somewhere where we can attract and retain the staff we need. And that is, I suspect, almost our number one priority today. Because if we haven't got those staff in place, we can't do the things we want to do. We shall go on spending too much on overtime. We shall go on putting more strain on our staff. And we shall have to use more in the way of private provision. And as Ian was explaining this morning, we don't get the same level of productivity yet. We'll improve it out of our private providers as we do out of our own resources. We can improve it, but the more we can do ourselves, the better. Next question is an interesting one. Are there any plans to merge SECAmb with South Central Ambulance Service? Geraint, you have a crack at that.
I'll have a crack at that one. I have made a public statement at a previous Council Governors meeting, which led to some press articles did it about what I said. So I might reiterate that statement to try to be more clear in my English, I think. The organisation at the moment has no plans to formally merge with any other organisation. What we do have is a collaboration with South Central in terms of how can we learn from them and how can they learn from us. So it's really important that we show we're an outward-looking trust. One of the allegations that was made previously from some of the external reviews into our organisation is that SECAmb was very introspective. We looked inwards and we thought we were the best. We now need to ensure that actually we understand how we can learn from colleagues, and South Central Ambulance Service is a trust that actually is a trust we can learn from. So we have no plans to formally merge at the moment. However, I will put the caveat that I put in the Council of Governors, which I will say again, which might lead Janine to have that perplexity with the press following from this conversation, that we need to think about what plans might happen in the future, because nobody knows what the NHS might need in the next 5 years. So I think we need to look at this in a very open-minded approach. Currently, it's a collaboration. It's part of how can we learn from them and how can they learn from us. And let's be honest with ourselves about what that means for ourselves.
I mean, there are also plans up in the ether somewhere to have, all the blue light services under single management. So I think the answer is going to be watch this space. But we have no current plans. What we will be doing is keeping an open mind as to what's best for patients and for staff. And we will see where that takes us. Next question. Why is the Trust investing in MRCs when resources are tight?
Do you want me to start and then I'll go to the ops team? Or
Why don't you... Who's best supposed to kick off with that one? Make ready centres. I think it's blindingly obvious because it's the best thing to do. Giles, do you want to kick off on that?
Absolutely. Make ready centres are an investment in clinical safety, in governance, and in the ability to free up the hours of our clinicians to do what they do best, which is serve patients. Yes, there is a considerable investment, but it's an investment for the future and an investment for SECAmb to build on where it's at now and improve things. So, it can look like a large investment at times, but it's there for an absolute necessity reason. We need to have the assurance that the vehicles are properly equipped, that they're clean, that they can be swab tested, that the vehicles that you end up in, if you are unfortunate enough to call an ambulance, are absolutely as clean as an operating theatre and you get perfect service. We can only do that with a make-ready centre, so that's why we're investing in it. It's patient safety.
I've seen several of the make-ready centres and I'm impressed by them. They give us all sorts of opportunities that we didn't have before. I might quibble that they look on the large side to me. I think we may have been a bit generous with some of our space. We may have to look at that again if money gets tighter. But I think they're great as a way of delivering better services to the public and also creating a better environment for staff, quite frankly. There is also an issue about being able to control drugs much more safely because we're equipping them with appropriate units that will control, measure, record our use of drugs. So I think it's an absolute must-do, and I very much welcome the fact that we are doing it. It's moving us up to a different plane.
It also allows us to deploy vehicles effectively. So what it's done is it looked at the whole estate. So if you take Giles, who's just about to put one in Polegate in the Eastbourne area, What we also look at is then where we need to actually put response posts so that we can put ambulances there so that they are there looking at activity for where the next emergency call is going to be had. So, because currently in the traditional model that we had, our ambulance stations aren't always in the place where we know that we need them to be. So I think it does allow us to deploy more effectively and get to patients when we need to get to them in quicker.
Okay. I'm saving one question to last. It's not that it's a sort of a patsy question, but it's a very good one to come last. But before I get to that, has this discussion sparked any other questions from the large number of people who are here today? Two gentlemen here. The gentleman on my side first, and then the gentleman on the other side of the aisle. We have a roving mic, so let's see if we can make it work this time. If not, speak up, or I'll repeat it for you.
Speak up. You said you're going to recruit from Australia. Why have you not gone to the Caribbean, America, New Zealand?
No, you're right, and there's lots of other. We look within the UK, but we also are looking within Europe, and Australia was just one of those places. So we do need to look everywhere for recruitment. So it's not just restricting ourselves. That's just one area where we've had success in the past, so we've gone back to. But that doesn't mean Andy Newton has also said there are other areas of Europe, and there are like New Zealand. So it's not restrictive, and we will be looking because we do need to do that.
Thank you.
Gentleman immediately behind you, Katie.
Thank you. It's George Moss, CFR from Crowborough. I just really think one of the questions wasn't fully answered earlier on. Andy made the good case for Entonox and Penterox for CFRs, but all we got in response from the front was legally fraught. Didn't actually say what was being done, whether it was being done, or whether it will happen or not happen ever. And so I'd just really like to conclude that question, please.
Could you possibly expand that a bit, Rory?
Yes.
I mean, I suspect legally fraught was correct, but just tell us what it meant.
Yeah, we're governed. Every administration of any medicines in this country is governed by the Medicines Act, and it's a very complex act. So that's one thing that we need to pay attention to. The second thing we need to pay attention to, we're in the midst of discussions with the CQC on a variety of different medicines administration issues. And we have a running debate with them, which we actually feel that we're on the inspired side of. I don't want to get into right and wrong because it's not that sort of issue. So my comments were really coming from what we're having to do just in general around medicines for the whole service, not just for CFR. If you want my own opinion, being an Irishman who would like just to get people to get the treatment that they require, and having gone into a pharmacy in Portugal recently and managed to get everything I needed without any doctor or nothing else, I think that we need to free up a lot of issues, particularly around pain relief and particularly, so medications and CFRs in my mind, here I'm going, career limiting statement, go hand in hand. So the instinct is there, but the reality is the law has yet to catch up with these things, and the law is very, very, very complex. And so that's why I said it's legally fraught. But I wouldn't mind having your support, and I'm sure Andy Newton will help me too, in trying to push some of those issues through. But perhaps we need to be paying a bit more attention, making sure we got all our basics right first before we do something innovative like that moving forward. Because that's a real challenge for us at the moment, getting excellent basics we can then build excellent innovations on top of, as opposed to excellent innovations which might fall because we haven't got the basics excellent in the first place. Do you see where I'm coming from? I hope that helps.
Thanks, Rory. Any further questions before we get to the close? Sorry, somebody behind the pillar. Lady behind over here, and then the gentleman over the far side, and the lady in the middle. I think those three we can probably manage.
Which one was first?
So the lady...
Would you mind Hello, I'm sorry to be a nuisance. I'm from West Sussex Hospital Foundation Trust. Ambulance hospital handover times, please. There is a risk posed to ambulance teams who insist on immediate handovers when A&E is full and there are no physical members of staff to receive patients. Can we have a decision, please?
Yeah. So what we... Sorry.
Rory.
Is that all right?
Right. There is no doubt that everyone who's working in the NHS, and Sir Peter's mentioned about how we all have to work together. So we don't see this as ambulance service versus the hospital. We see it as what do patients in our whole community right across need, including those within the hospital walls and those who are out within the community. We have a consultation document out which John Amos has been really driving forward with me, and what we've got in that is we're going to have a means of assessing the risk that the hospital is under versus taking into account the risk that we're under at that time, so that we can then have a process where senior people on our side talk to senior people on the hospital side and come to an agreement where the biggest risk lies. And that's pretty much, John, I'm correct with that? That's pretty much where our commitment is. So I think that takes your point. And I think it's not an easy discussion. And, but we are not intending to be unilateral in what we're doing, but we are intending to make sure that the risks that our patients face become visible.
I mean, these patients are taken out of the ambulances and checked. But what would you suggest the hospital can do? Have a bigger A&E or what? Or more money spent?
Well, we also have to ask the question, what are our patients going to do who may be in cardiac arrest and having no go? So it's a very difficult question, isn't it? So what we have to do is really work together on it, and that's what's proposed.
This is about the balance of risk between one set of risks in hospital and the risks for those who desperately need an ambulance outside hospital. And that is something which clinicians will have to decide on. There is not an easy answer, but we cannot tolerate a situation which is too dangerous. There was an occasion where we had 18 ambulances queuing up outside one hospital last year. That is not a situation which is viable, and we have to find ways around that. If that means that A&E departments need to be expanded, then that's a discussion that those trusts have to have with their CCG colleagues and with us in order to find a solution. But we cannot be the answer to A&E departments becoming clogged, because we just can't do it. It is too dangerous to those patients that we don't get to. Thank you.
No, what can you make your,
We are doing all we can, madam.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you. There was the lady at the end, this side first, I think, who wanted to ask a question, and then the gentleman over the far side.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a paramedic at Burgess Hill Ambulance Station. I've been on the road for almost 2 years, and I'm a direct entry paramedic from the University of Brighton. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your plans for staff retention. I suspect that most road staff would be happy to let you know why we're leaving.
I hope you aren't. Not yet.
Well, we know. How do you intend to provide better support for staff and improve staff welfare?
And I think you're right. It's about engagement, and I think something that we're working as an operations team is looking at that and actually listening to the staff as to why they're leaving. And as we've said, we know it's not just a financial thing. We know it's around the type of role, how staff are treated, and making that a better place. So something myself, James and Chris, along with Giles and the operational unit managers, we need to come out and find out from staff, because it's not just about reading forms when people have left. That's too late. We need to find out now so that we can work on how we can improve things and how we can move that forward. So quite happy, obviously, through I think OUM will be Tim Fellows, so quite happy through that to set up a group, and it's important for us going forward with the new structure to start to roll that out. So we've got a volunteer.
And if I may just very quickly put a rider to it. A big challenge for the Trust is to improve its culture of patient safety. That starts with looking after staff. And we have, so for me as the medical director, the issues of staff are really, really quite important to me, because you are the people who actually touch the patients, who make the difference to individuals' lives, etc. And so some of us have been studying a little bit more about what we need to be doing around patient safety. And I think Andy Collins in the room somewhere, Andy, well, he's probably disappeared. But as an example, he's down
No,
the
he's
back.
right at the back.
He's always at the back of the class. Andy's always at the back of that. But so he's back of a good class. So the thing about what Andy's been saying is actually what we need to focus about and how we're doing things around, let's say, looking at cycle times, is how we're going to improve people's breaks, meal times, all that sort of things. Things that really matter. but also I know there's some issues for people about young paramedics coming out, they're on their own in a car, blah, 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 all these things, they really matter. So I think that we want, in our group on cycle times, involves the unions as well, so that we're beginning to really tackle this. And frankly, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to say, Sir Peter, but that's never stopped me in the past. We need the unions' help in order to make sure that we get the situation and the experience for staff really good, because otherwise we're never going to deliver the patient safety agenda. So thank you for raising the issue.
And it may just be that involving some of our more recent recruits and getting their experience directly would give us a level of understanding that we don't otherwise have.
Yeah.
So maybe we can try that. There's a gentleman at the far side, and then I think I'll take the last question from Douglas in the middle.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, does SECAmb support frontline staff members who are or would like to be in the Armed Forces Reserves, specifically the Royal Army Medical Corps?
I'm told the answer to that is we do.
We do.
Yes, is the answer.
Thank you.
Right, last question, if we may, please, from Douglas in the middle. It's the first time I've ever had a question indicated by a walking stick waved at me. Thank you very much. It's a unique experience.
It did seem that my arm wasn't bloody tall enough.
Next time, put a flag on the stick as well.
I might do that. And I wasn't going to ask a question. I was going to make the odd statement. And I may go on for an hour or two. So
A minute or two will allow you, Douglas. Privilege of old age, for me.
Yes. The first thing I want to make clear is that the most important thing, of course, for ambulances, the most important emergency is that of cardiac arrest, which I'm particularly interested in. And I want to make it clear that cardiac arrest can never be a problem for ambulances, or hardly ever. It's a problem for the ambulance service, because ambulances don't get there quickly enough. Therefore, first responders are of huge importance. And I would like to say that I was actually the very first person, I think, to put automated defibrillators in the hands of non-medical people, and that was in the 1980s. And things have moved on since. Now, the next thing is we have to use them effectively. They're often not, because there's not a dedicated dispatch desk. They're often not, because the people at the dispatch desk tend to send people that aren't the nearest CFRs, and they have to have ways of knowing exactly who is nearest. Those are two big reasons. There's another reason, too, that the most important thing for cardiac arrest is to go along with an automated defibrillator, and the training you require for that is nil. You just require a little bit of familiarization that an AED will tell you everything to do. So what I'm saying is that in the past there have been places where they have not got enough first responders because there's a backlog in training. And if there's a backlog in training, then let us have more people who can't give Entonox and all the other things, but can at least use an AED, and that can be the start. And then if they do well, they can then progress and learn all the other skills. Now, at the moment, this is, as in many places, has not been happening. We don't have 24-hour cover where we should have, because they've got to be properly trained. No, let's get the cover for the most important things first, and then that's a start. I'm not quite sure where the question was in that, but thank you for thank you for listening.
I can see nods coming from the panel. Is that something that we should be able to work on and improve?
Yes.
Rory or Sue, whichever.
Well, and Sue,
both. Ladies
yes.
first.
Yes, I think it is, and I think it's certainly something as one of the groups. You're quite right. I can remember, Douglas, when I joined the ambulance service in Sussex, you saying, you know, all you need is a defibrillator to actually save someone's life. And I think we've probably come away from that a little bit. So I think part of the training, we're looking with Andy Collin as part of our CFR group, is actually looking at what the scope of practice is and how we can improve that, how we can improve the process and how we can get more people out there trained to actually do that, but also extend those skills, like we've said, with the work that Andy wants to do. So most definitely, yes.
Okay. Brian, as an experienced first responder, would you like to comment on that at all? Does that make sense to you?
It makes absolute sense, because I've seen in practice all too often the difference that can be made. The skills, as have been pointed out, are not so technical that they can't be easily learnt, but the speed with which you can arrive on the scene and manage the scene make a very large difference to whether that patient can survive. So all of these things have to come together. Just having a battery charger effectively, because that's what it looks like, alone is insufficient. But I'm in absolutely no doubts that people who have had familiarisation, doesn't have to be a CFR, can be people in communities who are trained by many organisations and by SECAmb and by CFR groups, can make a very, very real difference. The difference between a life lost and a life saved.
I've had experience with in training on a defibrillator as a sailing instructor. You know, a lot of people have that training these days. So it's absolutely something that more people should have. We then need to make sure that defibrillators are in the right places and that people know where they are when they are needed. I mean, that's probably more important than anything else. I'm going to stop there and move to the final question and say it wasn't a plant, it was a genuine one. What has been SECAmb's proudest moment this year so far? And I was going to head that straight to Giles, since he's nearest to the front line that we've got here.
I mean, Geraint mentioned Shoreham earlier. I was part of that, and you know, to see all of the work that's done in collaboration with the police, with fire, with Red Cross, with all of those services, it's quite humbling. But for me, the proudest moment happens nearly every day when, you know, Matt comes and tells me what a great job they did and how the ambulance crew supported them, or an ECSW on station gets their acceptance onto the paramedic course, and I watch them develop and become a paramedic. To the person who says, do you know what, I haven't done a life-saving job today, but do you know what, I made a difference and I helped someone. And I spoke to someone in here, I'm not going to say who it is in here today, and I said to her, that's what gives me the warm glow, because she explained to me how she's done 13 shifts on the road as a clinician, she did a resuscitation, and the person walked afterwards. Yeah, that's everything. Yeah.
And I very much hope that that's what makes staff join us and what makes them continue to stay with us, because that's what we need. And the more we can do of that, the better. Thank you all very much indeed for your patience and for attending today. We have had a busy day of it, and I'm very grateful for the feedback we've had. We will learn from it. We will try to keep you in touch with what is happening as we move forward. There are some evaluation forms, I believe. If you could fill those in, leave them in the box on the way out or leave it on your chair. It'll help us to improve this event next time round. My thanks to staff and to partners and colleagues for showcasing some of their work on the stalls around the room. There's always more that we can show and always more that other people can show. But these are some great examples of how we do try to work together. Thanks to Katie Spendiff and the corporate services team for organising the event. I think it went very, very well, apart from the noises off at one stage. But I hope everybody's been able to hear what we've had to say, been able to see the presentations, and I hope it's been informative for all of you. I'm very grateful to everybody for coming. The Trust Board, unfortunately, has got a little bit more work to do, so if we're vanishing quickly, it'll only be because we've got more work to do. If people want to have a look at what's left of the stalls, have another conversation, please do. The gentleman at the front who's very urgently wanting to say something.
Dare I say, Sir Peter, that I think you asked the CFRs in the room to stand up earlier. I think the ECSWs, the paramedics, equally ought to stand, and we should give them a round of applause.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Please do. Many thanks. Safe journeys home to everybody. Bye-bye.